In 2022 this case included a few nations and the sentence was given over under a month prior, which began as a fantasy finished as a blood and gore movie. Music. Ekaterina Bulgova was brought into the world on May 13, 1989 in Leningrad. It is quite possibly of the biggest city in Russia, which was then renamed to Holy Person Petersburg. The succession of occasions that finished in something horrendous started in Turkey in 2009, where the 20-year-old Ekaterina went holiday with her family. It is here that she met a German resident, Walter Baumann, who was 13 years more seasoned than her. Walter was conversant in Russian as he was brought into the world in Kazakhstan, a country that, like Russia, was a piece of the USSR until 1991. Walter got his schooling in Germany and brought in great cash, yet his own life wasn't going to. He was in steady hunt and longed for gathering the ideal lady. However, he, when all is said and done, didn't meet the models of an ideal man. He lived with his folks, didn't deal with his appearance, dressed untidily and looked frightful generally. He frequently met ladies through the web and practically every one of them were Russian. He talked with one of them for quite a while and chose to visit Russia to see her, in actuality. Yet when she met Walter in person, he didn't establish a decent connection with her, and she presently not had any desire to stay in contact with him. That is the reason when he had an occasion sentiment in Turkey, his companions couldn't accept the obvious reality. Ekaterina was youthful and wonderful. She probably had numerous admirers, yet for reasons unknown she picked Walter. This heartfelt romantic tale began out like numerous comparative love stories when two desolate hearts felt each other's fascination. After Ekaterina got back to Russia and Walter got back to Germany, they kept on visiting through virtual entertainment and long calls. He enlightened his companions concerning how great and how gorgeous she is, about how they chat on the telephone for quite a long time and compose verse to one another. Then he would periodically visit her in Holy Person Petersburg, burning through a huge load of cash on these movements. Around then Ekaterina was in her second year of learning at a college in St. Petersburg. Walter was serious with his expectations, thus he aided her progress to Hamburg College. This way Ekaterina left Russia and moved to Germany in 2010, in the port city of Bremerhaven, situated on the shore of the North Ocean. Individuals described Ekaterina as a shrewd, appealing and merry young lady. In the wake of moving, she stayed in touch with her family in Russia. In Germany she kept on concentrating on business organization, which she began back in Russia. She wanted to run and practice yoga, and she generally looked for calm places. A couple of months after the fact, the darlings got hitched. Walter's companion Alexander portrayed their wedding function as follows: they had a sumptuous wedding. I used to be a wedding picture taker, so I've seen a great deal. However, Ekaterina was the most lovely and cheerful lady of the hour I have at any point seen. The festival set them back large chunk of change. Without a doubt the enlistment occurred at a beacon from where they took off on a gigantic white pony-drawn carriage. Nobody has at any point seen something like this in Germany, yet there were not many visitors which appeared a piece bizarre. The wedding finished sometime before sunrise, says Alexander. Their wedding photograph catches a cheerful picture. Walter seems to be a man who upholds his young spouse, while Ekaterina embraces him delicately and grins euphorically. It seemed to be two individuals who are an ideal match, have at last found each other. The couple ventured into a blissful everyday life, and their story appeared as though a fantasy. Besides, rather than a rich palace, the lovebirds moved into Walter's folks' home, and this is the second Ekaterina had her most memorable issue since moving to Germany. Living respectively with Walter's folks demonstrated not to be simple. The fantasy began to self-destruct. Walter's mom was an extremely hard lady. She will play a significant on the off chance that not the fundamental job in how this story closes, so that is the reason it's smarter to give her a concise presentation. Ludmila Baumann spent the initial 38 years of her life in Kazakhstan. She was a superb understudy. At first she turned into an associate physicist technologist, then a substance designer, and afterward a center teacher. She got hitched at 18 and brought forth a child who was her lone youngster, and perhaps that is the reason he was the main individual in her life. The Baumann family had German roots, and that is the reason they emigrated from Kazakhstan to Germany. Bremerhaven turned into their new home. Ludmila worked at a marine organization exploring the issue of an unnatural weather change for quite a while. She stood firm on a decent footing there, frequently ventured out onto the ocean and partook in around 25 endeavors. Remembering once for Arctica, her relocation history was a model for some settlers in Germany, and that is why her 1-meter-long picture drapes along one more 30 representations on the veneer of the movement place in Bremerhaven. Yet Ludmila couldn't acknowledge the way that her child Walter was as of now not a little kid, however a completely developed man in his 30s. When he wasn't around, she would call him consistently, asking when he would return, where he was and with whom, as he was her lone youngster, she missing the mark on solid separation from him. Ekaterina has likewise experienced bias from Ludmila, yet at the same time attempted to satisfy her better half's mother. All around, Ludmila continually meddled in her child's marriage and scrutinized Ekaterina. She faulted her for being a terrible housewife. Ekaterina attempted to battle this sort of disposition, yet her endeavors were never fruitful. When she went out, she transformed into a dark mouse. In any case, she needed to hear from her mother by marriage how she is dressing like a whore. Walter worked in a port where he procured around 4,000 euros per month. He was consistently working on the entire ends of the week and occasions. Since it paid more, he wasn't a compulsive worker, yet rather ravenous. He set aside the majority of the cash he procured and had great reserve funds, which he would have rather not spent. In 2017, when Ekaterina got pregnant, Walter chosen to spend a little piece of his reserve funds. He purchased a house where they moved from his folks. The house search consumed most of the day, as it was significant for Walter to spend as minimal expenditure as conceivable. Ekaterina was trusting that the move would be a decent impact on their relationship. However, it wasn't. Ludmila was a consistent visitor in their home and kept on meddling in all circles of her child's life. Around a similar time, Ekaterina brought forth her little girl, and the connection between mates turned out to be much more stressed. After the introduction of the little girl, Walter turned out to be more severe in controlling of his significant other. He patronized her and precluded her from figuring out how to drive a vehicle, as well as didn't permit her to converse with her little girl in German, as he needed her to just know one language, Russian. Ekaterina failed to really see what these progressions in her better half's way of behaving were connected with. He turned out to be considerably more angry, desirous and controlling than before. It was getting more diligently to anticipate the progressions in his conduct. He could blow his top over any little immaterial things. The strain in the couple's relationship developed, and Walter ventured to such an extreme as to utilize his actual prevalence against his significant other and begin beating her toward the finish of 2019. Specialists previously found out about the Baumann family in light of the issue of aggressive behavior at home, yet the case was immediately shut when the couple let the social laborer know that they had accommodated. However, Ekaterina and her better half kept on upbraiding each other, reviling at one another occasionally, even before their child. Walter furtively took photographs and recordings of Ekaterina recording their contentions on the telephone. Walter asked a PC fellow from his circle of colleagues to hack his better half's telephone, yet he declined. Walter blamed his significant other for being a terrible mother and deranged. Ekaterina thusly blamed Walter for having lost interest in her, working excessively and being worn out as a result of it. She was unable to reside in steady pressure and dread any longer, and gone to a help place for casualties of aggressive behavior at home. Whenever she first connected for help was in the fall of 2020. After the spouse and little girl left, Walter made every effort to get them back. He guaranteed that he would change, said he understood that he acted in the incorrect manner, and let Ekaterina know that he was unable to reside without her and their girl. Subsequently, Ekaterina pardoned him and got back to their home with their little girl, yet there was no less battling between companions. Each time Walter understood that he had violated his significant other, he gave her gifts or organized a vacation. The man changed his disposition towards his better half as well as towards the youngster too. Walter's demeanor towards his little girl must be described as complete control. When he was at home, he needed the girl to constantly be in his sight. On the off chance that they headed off to some place, he wouldn't let her out of his arms, despite the fact that she was 3 years of age. By then he cut his work time at the port in half to have the capacity to invest more energy with his girl. He would take his young lady to kindergarten and get her. At night he cooked for herself, and during the night she rested in the guardian's room. The individuals who realized Walter very much portrayed him as a planner inclined to sensation. He was great at controlling individuals and was parsimonious. Cash was one of the fundamental life purposes for him. He frequently appeared to be anxious and fretful. After Ekaterina became a mother, she visited her family in Russia a few times, and each time she went with. By Walter, he expected that the wife would get back to Russia and deny him of the potential chance to associate with his girl. Ekaterina began considering divorce. She perceived how the husband's disposition was turning out to be increasingly more oppressive. Simultaneously, she found that every one of her records had vanished. As it will turn out later, Walter took all his significant other's papers to his mom's home and left them there. One time when Walter's mom was visiting them, the companions had one more contention and Ekaterina was removed from the house. She got tossed out like some futile thing. She went to the police and the circumstance was settled. One time Ekaterina and Walter had such a warm squabble just before their kindergarten that Young Help Administrations got a notice from organization with respect to the family. The quarreling couple began getting kid instruction support for a long time. A family emergency instructor was to go with the family and screen the kids' prosperity. The guide's decision was it is excessively risky for the kid to be left with her folks. The main explanation Ekaterina actually lived with her significant other was a direct result of her girl. However, she was unable to get back to Russia with her. For her girl to leave Germany, Ekaterina probably accepted Walter's assent, demonstrating that he isn't against his kid leaving the country. In August of 2021, Ekaterina took the girl for the subsequent time and went to a ladies' emergency community. Let the organization know that her better half needed to end her life. Social administrations needed to allow a 5-year-old young lady to an halfway house, and the clinician of the Young Undertakings Division depicted the circumstance as exceptionally extreme. Ekaterina consented to the Adolescent Issues Administration bringing her little girl into childcare. However, Walter and his mom denounced it. That is the reason the two guardians needed to deal with the kid for a couple of days. The young lady resided with her dad, and for the following couple of days she resided in a ladies' sanctuary along with her mom, continuously rotating and with the condition that the couple's little girl should go to kindergarten to learn German. In half a month the family rejoined again. A few Russian sources express that in the ladies' sanctuary Ekaterina had terrible flatmates and that kindergarten which the girl probably been visiting was excessively far away. Subsequently she got back. However, presently the life partners have begun the separation cycle and lived in isolated rooms. Ekaterina's longing to get back to Russia was developing. Walter wasn't against it yet, just depending on the prerequisite that his little girl stay with him in Germany. That is the reason Ekaterina visited Holy Person Petersburg at the turn of 2021 and 2022 alone in Russia. She had a date with a man she met on the web. He was from the Siberian city of Omsk and was a pilot. Ekaterina got back to Germany in mid-January 2022 and kept on visiting with the Russian pilot consistently. They sent each other many love messages. Yet half a month subsequent to getting back to Germany, specifically on February 4, 2022, the 32-year elderly person quit, reaching her family and her new sweetheart a vacant bag and 13,000 euros from the spouse's reserve are every one of the A. Yet again Ekaterina took with her. When she took off, she left her telephone, keys, garments, and in particular her 5-year-old little girl. This is the variant Walter told the police on the 6th of February 2022 when Ekaterina's folks couldn't contact her for 2 days and connected with German police with a solicitation to direct a government assistance. Look at we found about her vanishing in a bizarre manner. I was unable to get her on the telephone for a couple of days concerning Walter. Then he got her and said that he hadn't seen her since the 5th of February. He likewise said that she doesn't answer since she doesn't have cash on her. Equilibrium, said Svetlana, Ekaterina's mom, to writers. The whole city went to look for Ekaterina. Individuals looked through each square meter, set up flyers and examined each rendition of what happened. An example of the rare type of person who couldn't have cared less about Ekaterina's vanishing was Walter. While concerned individuals set up flyers all over the city, the man was occupied with remodeling his home. They expected the most obviously terrible following the vanishing of the lady, and her better half was the focal point of consideration. The police looked through the place of the Baumann family just a brief time after Ekaterina probably took off from it. At this point Walter was done with remodels. He painted the floors in the visitor room and supplanted a sofa. He was likewise seen buying a huge amount of chemicals in the nearby store. The police found that the observation film from the camcorders in the house had mysteriously vanished. Officials looked through the house For 3 hours for any proof of the wrongdoing they drove a discovery canine through the carport and the actual house in the carport. The canine turned out to be marginally fomented, however didn't give a relating signal. The main tests led by criminalists uncovered no proof inside the house or the carport. In the littered vehicle the police found a blade and an electric stunner which were seized as potential proof. Officials saw that Walter was not worried about his significant other who disappeared in the smallest, rather he was keen on whether he would get sole guardianship over his 5-year-old little girl in the event that his better half didn't return. The quest for Ekaterina went on many days, yet nothing was found. It resembles she evaporated. Officials comprehended that the likelihood of a youthful mother taking off and leaving her little girl reports and called behind in an outside nation is very low. Walter had the police's doubt as well as his explanation that Ekaterina took off taking a vacant bag with her. The secretive vanishing of Ekaterina stressed individuals in the city and a long ways past it. Ladies who didn't have a clue about Ekaterina coordinated a hunt. "We will keep searching for her until we figure out what happened," expressed one of the coordinators. 14 days after the vanishing of the youthful mother, around 400 workers generally around North Germany looked for her in Bremerhaven with the assistance of salvage canines. A few times this occurrence caused a gigantic response via virtual entertainment. Ekaterina's family stood out to her vanishing in Russia, and this story was displayed on the Super Russian channels. "My girl was with this person for a long time, however for 18 months their marriage comprised exclusively of squabbles and he hit her multiple occasions," said Ekaterina's mom to writers. "He kept my little girl in confinement. He removed her IDs and bank cards. He didn't permit her to meet anybody on Walk 1 2022." 25 days after the vanishing of Ekaterina, horrendous news spread first in Bremerhaven, then all over the nation and later in Russia. A customary bystander saw a peculiar bag that washed shorewards during his stroll along the neighborhood stream Weser. He was frightened when he opened it. Inside were parts of a lady's body which had been gathered in trash containers. It is critical to take note of that not all pieces were inside the bag, some of them were missing. Unfortunately the casualty ended up being 32-year-old Ekaterina Baumann. By an odd occurrence the bag was found close to the beacon where she got hitched. The way that the bag washed shorewards was a fortunate turn of events for the examination. As per specialists it could have swum toward the North Ocean, and afterward Ekaterina would stay missing perpetually. This is the means by which expects a blissful completion of the puzzling vanishing of her family members. Disintegrated now, they could express farewell to their cherished girl mother and companion. The city occupants coordinated a little ad-libbed remembrance. Their nearby inhabitants who not interested in what happened left blossoms, lit candles and even composed letters. Walter Baumann was captured as the primary and just suspect. In the wake of finding the body the family house was looked for the subsequent time. This time specialists were occupied for a few days. The police found a jug with major areas of strength for a which was found in the Ekaterina's blood. The police likewise found single-use gloves, foil and cement tapes, as well as enormous amounts of trash containers and chemicals, besides canisters with acidic corrosive solvents and dye bag keys. And the pink scarf that was on Ekaterina's neck on her last selfie were found in the carport and the shed. Examiners additionally saw that there were scarcely any of Ekaterina's own things. Most of her garments were tossed out and her wedding photograph, a sign of cheerful minutes, was taken cover behind the piano. The police have likewise found the white coat that was on Ekaterina in her last selfie. The coat was found in a garbage bin at work of Ludmila Baumann, Walter's mom. While in care, the man frequently composed letters to his mom in which he admitted his adoration for herself and called her "my child." There were dire requests in the letters, for example, "Assist us with everything, mothering, save us, you can do it, you are my, as it were, trust for the future, and kindly save me." What he implied by this turned out to be clear just 8 months after the fact. Friday, February 4, 2022 was the last day of Ekaterina's life. At 4:30 p.m. she took a 10-minute stroll in her light-shaded coat and yellow skirt. Neighbors' camcorders kept it at night. The family ate. There was fish, halibut, pureed potatoes and olives, as well as a jug of wine, as would be natural for Walter. Ekaterina drank just a single glass and he drank the rest. That is the reason he nodded off at 8 in the evening. As per the court reports, Ekaterina's telephone was associated with the organization once and for all at 7:41 p.m. At 8:25 p.m. she settled on a video decision to her new sweetheart from her PC. She was feeling great and said that she would call him again when she put her kid to sleep. However, she didn't call him that night. She didn't call anybody. 2 hours after the fact, the Russian pilot communicated something specific, wishing her a decent evening, yet his message stayed uninitiated. A scientific assessment showed that Ekaterina was dead 2 hours after the supper. This was affirmed by the examination of her stomach contents. Criminological specialists found hints areas of strength for of and liquor in her blood. The hyoid bone was broken, thus the reason for not entirely set in stone to be strangulation. All the other things that was finished with the body, as per specialists, was finished utilizing extremely sharp devices. The following morning, Walter momentarily opened his vehicle at 7:22 a.m. At 10:20 a.m. the vehicle drove off and returned at 4:49 p.m. 3 days after the fact. Walter called his significant other's telephone, presumably to affirm his legend that she had taken off. He likewise sent her a couple of messages posing the clearest inquiry: "Where are you, Ekaterina?" Before Ekaterina's vanishing, Walter and his mom talked seriously through WhatsApp every day except after February 4. There was quietness between them, which is absolutely unique. In February, Walter drove his vehicle to auto administration, where he let a representative know that the vehicles inside should have been cleaned completely start to finish. On August 26, 2022, a preliminary started. The examiner contended that Walter slipped narcotics into his significant other's beverage, and afterward, when she nodded off, he choked her. Walter arranged ahead of time how he planned to manage her body. The examiner's office referred to the spouse's apprehension about losing guardianship of his girl in case of separation, as well as monetary misfortunes, as a rationale. It was likewise made public that hints of blood were found in the carport, which Ekaterina's better half needed to clean. As per guidance from the web, they were under the rack, on the floor, on the steps, and in the creases. Hints of blood were likewise found on the rug in the storage compartment of his vehicle. Regardless of careful cleaning, specialists from the establishment of measurable medication demonstrated that it was Ekaterina's blood in every one of the spots referenced over. Walter's telephone and PC were held onto by the police, and they gave replies to many inquiries not well before the misfortune he made. The accompanying quest inquiries how to keep away from discipline for taking an individual's life. Which corrosive breaks up meet the number of liters of corrosive that are expected to fill a bath. How to peruse others' WhatsApp visits. What amount of time does it require to kick the bucket from tranquilizers? Might you at any point be sentenced without proof? In Germany, in the period from December 2021 to the furthest limit of February 2022, he made around 500 pursuit questions. Everything highlighted the way that Walter arranged this wrongdoing. Upon the arrival of his better half's vanishing, he researched electric stunner 2 times. Scientific specialists found hints of electric shock on Ekaterina's body. Examiners think that Walter was utilizing a stunner to check on the off chance that his significant other was as yet alive. In court, Walter wore his wedding band and expressed that he is a single man. For 2 long months he was quiet and offered no remarks on the charges brought against him. At times, when the observers were giving their declarations, he would plug his ears as though it didn't have anything to do with him. The most feelings he showed was the point at which he saw his mom in the court. He cried when she was addressed as an observer. He gazed at her with his hands collapsed as though in supplication. "Get me out of here," he asked his mom in a letter, and it seems like the lady consented to help her child. During her declaration, Ludmila Baumann expressed that it was she who took Ekaterina's life. "It was me, not my child," she said. This is what she shared with the dumbfounded court. She came to the children and her girl in Regulations home around midnight, since her child called and requested that she care for the granddaughter. When she showed up, she saw Ekaterina on the sofa, who was profound sleeping. In the expressions of Ludmila, she needed to wake her up and began to shake her. Ekaterina awakened and hit her in the face. They stirred up some dust, over which, as per Ludmila, she stifled her child's better half. She likewise said that it was she who played out the accompanying activities with Ekaterina's body. She said, "I cherished Ekaterina as a girl. I didn't need this." Yet was it Ludmila who carried out the wrongdoing? It is conceivable that her affection for her child was huge, to the point that she chose to assume the fault for him. As I previously said, mother and child were very close. Furthermore, chatted on the telephone regularly. The whole WhatsApp talk among mother and child took up 1,699 pages of examination documents. Regardless of the self-implication, Ludmila left the court as a free resident on that and the wide range of various days of the preliminary. The jury and the examiner's office didn't completely accept that the lady's assertion and expected that she simply needed to safeguard her child. Even experienced lawyers were shocked by the mother's self-implication. The lawyer of a 66-year elderly person requested her capture and her child's protectors requested Walter's delivery. However, it didn't arrive. At this, the mother was left free and her child stayed in prison, yet she wasn't going to surrender. Ludmila composed a letter to the court in which she depicted how she managed the body exhaustively. She by and by expressed, "My child didn't do this." She needed to be addressed once more and charged, yet the court didn't give her desire and didn't accept her by and by. Ludmila figured out how to demonstrate that she participated in the wrongdoing. As I referenced, not all pieces were found in the bag. Ludmila Baumann showed where to search for the missing part which didn't fit in the bag. The gave data ended up being valid and the police found one more sack which was burdened so it didn't drift. The pack was found in the specific put. Ludmila highlighted pedometer on Ludmila's telephone has likewise shown that at the evening of the homicide at approximately 0:40 am she strolled 220 yards. Neighbors' camcorders close to Walter's and Ekaterina's home recorded an individual passing by the telephone of Walter's dad likewise showed movement around. Then he drove Ludmila to the son's home in spite of the fact that he let examiners know that he was sleeping around. Then specialists laid out that at this point Ekaterina was at that point dead, which implies that the 66-year elderly person was giving bogus declaration. And afterward there's this peculiar detail: Ludmila Baumann came to the son's home when Ekaterina was dead and she was there during additional activities in regards to the body. Regardless of whether she yet again take part in the process, she helped clean the house. Essentially she assisted her child with concealing the proof of the wrongdoing and was an associate. However, evidently the relating regulations work diversely in Germany. Ludmila wasn't captured or accused of anything. This appears to be odd, doesn't it? If it's not too much trouble, compose your opinion on this in the remarks. The nearer the day of the decision was, the more frantic the mother became in her endeavors to save her child. She composed the adjudicator one more letter in which she expressed that she serious the wrongdoing and not Walter. Now the letter said, "I loathed Ekaterina yet couldn't perceive my child about it. He was battling for the love of his significant other and I was anxious about the possibility that she would need to end his life. That is the reason I chose to dispose of Ekaterina by making maybe she harmed herself in view of her grievous love for a Russian pilot in the most natural sounding way for her." She printed a farewell letter in Ekaterina's name and planned to put it close to her when she passed on. She spiked the juice with different medications and gave this juice to her child, not letting him know it, however requesting that he give it to his better half. During supper Ludmila expressed that she came to the child's home to leave a goodbye note written in the name Ekaterina, yet she awakened and Ludmila needed to choke her. Yet the court didn't really accept that the lady's admission, as everything highlighted the way that the wrongdoing was carried out by her child. Walter was quiet all through the whole cycle and on one of the last hearings he presented his notes on 230 pieces of paper about his years in Kazakhstan, his life and his affection. The primary message of his assertion was, "I generally cherished Ekaterina and our little girl." However, her profound burnout and mental issues prompted many fights. 230 pieces of paper, yet he just momentarily addressed the night that changed all. That he expressed that he was sleeping when his mom ended the existence of his significant other and hauled her into the carport. Walter faulted his mom for this terrible wrongdoing and said, "She deceived me, utilized me and tossed me into jail." While tending to the adjudicator he likewise said, "My little girl lost her mom, she should not lose her dad too." The creepiest thing in this story isn't even the subtleties of this unnerving wrongdoing, however the way that every one of this happened just before the eyes of the 5-year-old little girl of the couple. As of now, the Russian grandma is restricted from chatting with her granddaughter, which is believed to be given to a German non-permanent family. Walter was at home along with his little girl. Everything occurred before the youngster. He made a psychotraumatic circumstance for the Young lady, she frequently murmurs something highlighting her head and lower arms. She saw everything, says Ekaterina's mom Svetlana. At present the young lady is living in an office for damaged kids and is given another name so she doesn't figure out the narrative of her genuine family. Svetlana is attempting to get guardianship for her granddaughter, yet the German specialists don't permit her to try and chat with her on the telephone. On May 23, 2023, when the decision was reported, Ekaterina's girl was 6. Walter Baumann was given a lifelong incarceration. German regulation is to such an extent that following 15 years, he will be qualified to parole. The urn with the Katerina's remains was covered in her old neighborhood of Holy Person, Petersburg. The instance of Ludmila Baumann is as yet open. It is conceivable that the examiner's office will charge her as an accessory. However, up until this point this has not occurred.